he's senior by 3 seconds.
Thank you, Leader Schumer. I want to thank all of you for joining us today and say to each one of you, actually, that I hope you're okay and that it's okay to not be okay. This Thursday is a harsh anniversary. 1 year since not just a violent, but a deadly insurrection here in the nation's capital. As Senator Klobuchar said, the violence and the damage done by the DIG-LI did not end on that day. I also want to remind us that it did not start on that day either. The insurrection of last January 6th was a long time in coming. Now, I approach my reflections on January 6th with a slightly different perspective. First, I was not here on that day. I was in transition. It was the morning after the election of Senators Warnock and Ossoff in Georgia, 2 weeks after the appointment for me to join the U.S. Senate had been announced by Governor Newsom in California, and 2 weeks before we were sworn in. Where was I that day? I was at home. I was in full-on transition, closing out business at the Secretary of State's office in California, interviewing potential staff on a Zoom, right? So 2020, when my wife interrupted me, which she never does. And she said, Alex, there's something happening in Washington. You need to finish that Zoom. You need to come watch TV and see what's going on. And so from the outside looking in, I had, I wouldn't call it an advantage, but the unique perspective of seeing the split screen. The efforts to certify the election results happening inside the chambers and the violence mounting outside. And just as the insurrectionists were breaching the United States Capitol, our 3 children came downstairs. It was the first week of January. They weren't back in school yet. They certainly weren't back in school in person because of the pandemic. Now my boys have been here to Washington, D.C., and they've been to this Capitol. They know what it represents. And they saw the violence that day, and they know that I was transitioning into a new job. And they asked me, really, Dad? That's where you're going? We're having a tough time reconciling what happened that day and what it meant and what we need to do about it as adults. Imagine trying to explain that to our children, the next generation for our nation. And so to the best of my ability, I explained that, yes, I'm going there to work. And I'm now going there with more purpose and more resolve for the sake of our democracy and for the sake of future generations to be able to live the American dream. Now, I also approach this date, again, evidence of the dangers of the big lie after having served as California Secretary of State for 6 years. You know, when I ran for Secretary of State in California, soon after the Shelby v. Holder decision by the Supreme Court is when I announced my candidacy. It's because of my fundamental belief in voting rights and the ability for any eligible American to easily register to vote, stay registered to vote, be able to cast their ballot, and have their ballot counted as cast without any unnecessary obstacles or barriers. What a concept. And so I enthusiastically have been part of the group that has negotiated what is now the Freedom to Vote Act, because the reforms called for in this measure are not just ideas that we think are good and we're going to cross our fingers and hope they work. They're proven best practices, reforms that have been implemented in state after state, both red states and blue states, along with, I guess, some purple states, you can call them, that show that you can make it easier for eligible Americans to register to vote, stay registered to vote, cast their ballot, and, by the way, strengthen the integrity of our elections in the process. It's not an either or. We can facilitate participation, strengthen election integrity. That's what we're seeking to do. That is what our nation needs us to do as part of a comprehensive effort to ensure that a deadly insurrection in the nation's capital to interrupt a peaceful transition of power never happens again. And it is with that perspective, and it is with that passion, that I say if we need to change some rules in the Senate to make it so, then that's what we need to do. The stakes are too high. And so, Leader Schumer, I want to thank you for your leadership in keeping this a front burner issue and for involving me in this effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. You've done a great job as part of it.